I'm Alan Robarge. Welcome to The New Love Addiction, where we are not talking about addiction. We're talking about attachment injuries and healing attachment trauma. And I want to talk about relating and healing an attachment wound as it relates to your mother or the mother. And this is a bit complicated. There's a lot of layers here, which of course we know there's this idea of the archetypal mother, the archetype, this universal symbol of the mother is just so profoundly meaningful and impactful. Just hear the phrase, the mother, and that's so meaningful to our psyche. It's so integral to our development as human beings. And we do not need to literally be talking about mother. This could be your primary caregiver. This could be someone who was a mother figure. But we use that word because the point of this video is to acknowledge the layers and the complexity of making peace with and integrating and understanding what does it mean to be conscious of the mother-child relationship, and to be conscious of how that interaction impacts and also impacted obviously our personality, our development of who we are today, but very much influences still today how we create relationships as adults. And if you have some history of attachment injuries occurring in your family system, and maybe even playing out due to the quality of your relationship with your mother, this could have perhaps shown up in your mind and in your nervous system and in your brain as a trauma, attachment trauma. So if you're on a healing path to heal attachment trauma, you inevitably are going to be looking at the history of what you learned in relationship with your mother, as well as pointing towards how you have grown beyond the previous ways of relating and or improved upon what was given. So what I want to point out is that there are many ways to think about interacting with this content of, we say, your relationship with your mother or the mother. So I want to begin by pointing out the literal person, the physical person, the woman who is your mother. Perhaps she's passed away, so she's no longer living. But the person, the physical person, the real person as your mother, we want to acknowledge that framework. The reason why it's important to think to call that out is because I want to introduce the introject of your mother. So we have inherited, the brain has coded the memory of the mother. So if I'm speaking for myself and if I'm thinking of my mother, there is a physical person who is the mother, the real person that my mother is still living, so the person I interact with. But then there's also the person in my mind who is my memory, who is the composite of my life experience with the real person. And it's that introject, that internalized image of who she both was to me and also who she is to me, that essentially I'm looking at my relationship to my own imaginary idea of this internalized mother. The reason why it is so important to point this out is because it is very possible, and I'll speak for myself, you could figure it out for yourself, I might not have healing work, I might not need to make peace with the literal real person who is living today, who is an adult, with me, adult to adult relating, adult child to parent, who we are today, the literal person, that is a certain, I could review the quality of our interaction. I can review how are we relating, and perhaps there is some healing work to be done. But if I also think in terms of this introject, my image, my internalized idea of who my mother is, I then realize that the healing work that I'm doing is based upon this internal relationship of the idea of my mother, not necessarily who she is today, which potentially is going to make this even more complicated. I'm going to create even more versions of what I'm talking about is the phrase then and now. So there is the real person. I have a mother who's a real person, and it's who she is now. I can think of my relationship with who she is now. And then I can think about the relationship of who she was at any particular age. I'll just, generically say when I was younger through childhood. So when I can think back on, for many reasons, this might be true for you in your life, true for you and your mother, that if you look at who the person is today, she is not there might be obviously certain personality traits that she's very much the same and the same person. But if you think back, you're not living in the same 1972, 1984, whatever year it is. You're not living in the same, she too has evolved and grown. And so the real person, there's who the real person is today, and you have a relationship with that real person. And then there's also you remembering who she was back in the earlier years. And then we simultaneously have this introject. I still have a relationship with my imagined mother, the composite in my mind of who I think she is today. And when I'm doing some healing work or grappling with trying to make sense and make peace of that relationship, I'm not necessarily interacting with the real person. I'm interacting with the imagined projection and the introject of who I have created her to be. And part of the honest healing work is to compare the two and to see what kind of discrepancy there is and how much I have maybe even distorted reality or warp reality or change reality due to certain wounds, due to certain losses, due to unintegrated losses that are going to impact how I feel about this internalized sense of who my mother is, which very, very possibly actually do not today relate to who the real person is. And so I could ask myself, am I healing the real relationship with the real person? Am I healing relating to who the real person was back in the day, or who the real person is today? I can also look at my internalized imaginary mother, the composite of the mother who I take with me, the mother in my mind, the idea of my mother, and am I doing healing work as far as how I'm relating to that idea today? Or do I need to fall back in time and think about memories and think about different ages? And do I need to do some healing work around who I thought she was, my introject, the imaginary mother, the idea of the mother back in the day, back in the early years? And I also like to take what half decades, age 0 to age 5 to age 10, age 10 to age 15, etc., etc. And when you do that, you can also look at this introject and say, well, did you have a different understanding of mother at those different half decades? Or you can even break it down into different ages. And for me, without going into my history in this moment for the sake of time, but I can just very simply, easily say, well, yes, there were some significant life situations that occurred in my family history that I can say developmentally and emotionally I had a particular relationship with my mother. I internalized this this idea of mother from age such and such to whatever other age, and then life unfolded certain, these are these different chapters. And we might need to take an inventory to do healing work on these different aspects of our relationship with our mother. If we don't think of it in these terms, and I apologize that there is an aspect to this that's just confusing, it's like a lot, but it's necessary to break it down into these categories, because if you just generically say, oh, I'm doing healing work on my mother, we run the risk of perpetuating and projecting our unmet needs and our woundedness onto the real person today, and that's going to limit and hinder how we are going to be in relationship today. And so there needs to be a kind of reconciliation to make sense of this. Lastly, if we're talking about mother, what I want to introduce that there are two other forms of mother. There's you as a mother, and even if you're a man, for myself being a man, what is my mother nature? What is the part of me that is mothering? And this is going to cross over into the introject of what I learned, how I've integrated a sense of this idea of mother. But we're looking at mother energy and mother quality, mothering qualities, and how am I a mother to myself? What is my relationship to my skills as a self-parent? And so there might be a chapter of healing work to explore, to sit down and think, what the heck does that mean? And how do I make sense of that? Activating, bringing out, nurturing my own nurturing qualities, my own mothering qualities. And then lastly, one other layer to all of this is the big grandmother, the archetypal mother, the mother that transcends and goes beyond the mother in your life, the mother that goes beyond your own personal skill or quality of having motherly energy or mothering abilities towards yourself. We're also looking in the world, this idea of Mother Nature, this idea of the Great Mother, Mother Earth, and the energy, the essence that you can go in any culture, you can go anywhere around the world, and if you know the language, if you know the right words, and you say the mother, that activates something in everyone's psyche. I mean, that is very base level human experience is to have some knowing of the mother. And it could be very important to do some healing work around this ideal mother, the archetypal mother, the universal mother, the great mother, because in inviting those qualities and doing some healing, and for many people too, it taps into the spirituality, taps into the divine, taps into, the great mother as the goddess, if that is or isn't your ideology and how you relate to, practicing spiritual expression. But even if you look at it intellectually, there's some real big benefit in, how is the world a mother to you? How is the world cradling you? How is the society at large your mother? How is the world around you offering nurturing and helping you grow in the same way that a mother does? So, real mother, introject mother, the part of yourself that is the self-parent mother, and then the universal mother, the archetypal mother, and then breaking them down into looking at then versus now. You can create that distinction, and you could also look at different ages. And then, of course, you can apply this whole video, just everything I said, substitute the word father. It's the exact same thing. You can look at, father as a person, and then also the introject of father, your imagined idea of father, as well as universal father and your own father energy. How do you bring that parental nature, that fatherly ability to your own life and interacting into the world? All of these points I'm making are things to think about when you're on the healing path, and they're very important, especially when you're doing work around attachment trauma, because the mother and father generally are the two main key players that have influenced how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about creating intimate relationship. And if you have some attachment injuries that need attending to, chances are the mother-father are going to be very much linked to that healing work. I hope that this was helpful. I hope it makes sense. I acknowledge it's a little bit heady and complex, but nonetheless, I hope you can sort through it and it makes sense. Please subscribe to this YouTube video if you would like to see more just like it. And then also to learn more about me, please go to alanrobarge.com. Thank you for watching.